the other 75% of bacteria that lives on your face, they choose you. They choose to live on your skin and to protect you and to look after you.
Hey, Ron, what's going on?
Hello, Governor. How you doing?
Oh my God, you were gone for like 4 days and you came back with a British accent?
Oh, yeah, I did with my trainers on and my jumper, took the lift and had some vitamins and wrapped in aluminum. I learned the language of England.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm in Panama, I definitely take on the Panamanian accent, which I'm not going to do in English because it only works in Spanish.
Nice. Well, welcome back. How was the rest of your trip to Panama?
I don't remember how much I talked about it in our last call, but I did cross the continent. I went from the Pacific to the Atlantic in a day. The road is fantastic. I think I probably talked about how we watched a container ship with 12,000 containers, which barely has any room on either side of the lock, go through one of the locks on the Atlantic side. And just overall, a great trip. The last time we recorded, I was in a co-working space in Panama City. And here we are back in Brooklyn, both of us back in Brooklyn. You went to London. What did you do in London?
London, I went for a fun trip with my family. My husband's really interested in history, and there was an exhibit at the Victoria and Albert Museum that he wanted to check out. So that was the driving force, but we have friends and family that live in London. So we went around to meet up with them. We took a boat down the Thames River and saw all the sights. We did some touristy stuff one day in the morning, and it was so crowded. We're like, you know what? Nope, this is not for us. I get nervous around very, very, very large crowds. Just not a fan of that. But besides that, I also met up with today's guest that we're interviewing, Natalie Enslow. So more about her later. And it was great to meet up with her. But overall, it was a jolly good time. I'll have to tell you. I can't wait to go back.
When I went to London, I did one touristy thing, which I think was to go see the crown jewels. And the crowd was just incredible. And then after that, I was like, never again, because I'm not really into those kinds of things either. And big crowds, I'm definitely not into them.
Yeah, Erum does not wait in line. She does not wait in line. She just can't. But yeah, it was cool. It was great to be there, meet our guest for today, and to get some more ideas for Grow Everything, which we want to share. It's not our podcast. We didn't make this for Karl and Erum and for Messaging Lab. This podcast really was created for the industry because no one was really talking about what was going on in the bioeconomy in a way that made it more accessible to people that might not be in the biotech industry, and to talk about bioindustrials, those materials, ingredients, foods, technologies that are replacing some petrochemical derived products that are on the non-biopharma, non-healthcare side. And we're like, hey, look, we know all these people. Let's get them together, but let's create this platform, this podcast, this new medium for our industry so people can participate, so people can use this platform to get the word out.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying also that we do listen to a lot of podcasts. And the only time I've ever heard anybody talk about the impact of biology in terms of being able to really supply people with food, materials, and medicines is a guy named Mo Gaudat, who's an Egyptian technologist who worked at Google for a while. And he mentioned it more in passing in terms of this idea that engineering biology is helping to usher in an age of abundance. We have the tools to build everything, and we don't need to extract from the earth anymore. And that's why we have this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah. There was nothing. We created something, and we created something for you, for those that are in the world of biotech and biology that need to get the word out. So if you have something to say, if you're looking for a new platform to speak about what you're working on and you're looking to get a head start, reach out to us because we're doing this for you. There's a lot going on in the news and we need people to learn about what options are there. And here we are with the podcast to share that.
Yeah. And one thing that was in the news that I think happened last week as we were recording the podcast was this news that RFK Jr. met with several CEOs of big food companies to focus on banning artificial dyes, which are still used widespread in American foods. They're not used as much in European foods. And we know a lot of people who are working in this space.
Yeah, it's a big deal because a lot of food dyes are made with petrochemicals. They have effects on the human body that we're still uncovering. And in Europe, a lot of artificial dyes are banned. But why are they not banned in the United States? So RFK Jr., whether you love him or hate him, has taken a stand against artificial food dyes. It's refreshing to see that, look, we have to do something. It was great to hear that the CEOs of these food industry giants came together in this closed door meeting. I wish it was open door. I'm so curious to learn what was said. If it was an amenable conversation, if it was contentious, I'm so curious. But companies span from PepsiCo, General Mills, Smuckers, Kraft, Heinz, Kellogg's, all of them. So we've spoken to some of these companies, and there are attempts at looking at what food dye replacements are out there. But in terms of integrating it into their supply chains, it's still fuzzy. It's still unclear what it would do to the cost of their goods. Getting more bio-derived dyes is a question mark. So we want to learn about who has a drop-in replacement, if that's something that's available. For example, for the red dyes, red dye 40, red dye 3, those have been known to have harmful side effects. So what bio-derived product is out there that can replace the red dye 40s of the world? And I know that our friends at Synonym have been talking about this in terms of options and biomanufacturing, but it'd be great to talk about what does that whole value chain look like from the innovators that we know that have been on this pod, that listen to this podcast, that are looking to work with these huge companies to help them replace their, lack of a better term, like toxic practices. I mean, it wasn't intentional. No one knew, but now the data is revealing this information. And are we just going to continue business as usual, or are we going to change? So I am keeping an eye on this. I know you're keeping an eye on this. We want to be able to see who's making moves, what are the players, and how can we bring them together to create an efficient way to replace some harmful chemicals in our foods.
I think that's a great segue into the next piece of news that I just wanted to bring up before we get to the podcast. Ars Technica wrote this great piece on who gets ownership of useful genetic data. We talk about this a little bit in the past in terms of how it should be open source. But in the early 2000s, mid 2010s, there was this Nagoya protocol that set out these guidelines so that researchers would obtain permission from providers of genetic data and agree to share the profit if they extract something of value. The United States is the only United Nations member state that never ratified that agreement. And there was this incredible article, like I said, on Ars Technica that covers antibiotics, bioprospecting, biopiracy, and how AI impacts all of this. Because once this biological information is made public, AI can take it and you can put that new information into an organism to make it do a particular thing. I mean, this is the beauty of bioengineering. This really reminded me of two things. One is that biology is really going to be a force for redefining intellectual property. The fact that it's so simple to copy a genetic code and move it from one place to another, I think is going to make that Nagoya protocol obsolete. It's not going to matter. But then the bigger question is who benefits from useful genetic data? We'll put a link to this article in the show notes. We'd love to hear people's take on it.
Yeah. I mean, the Nagoya protocol also really looks at the origin of genetic information, where it comes from different countries. So if you find a microbe in Japan as an American and you take that to America and you create a product profiting off of this microbe that originated in Japan, then the Japanese, they should get a piece of that. That's the thought behind the Nagoya protocol, to my understanding.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's what I understand too.
Yeah, but the challenge is microbes are everywhere. They move everywhere. So how do you know where things are originating from? The other part of this is the ownership of genetic data. So if it's a naturally occurring microbe, then no one should own it. You can't own nature. But where the ownership comes is in the engineering, right? So you're talking about replacing genes and you're optimizing a microbe for a certain industrial process. Okay, yeah, that's where the ownership lies in that process. But when it comes to something naturally occurring, you can't really own it. Nagoya trying to own the origin of it and participation if it's from your country, but it's also hard to really pin down. There's a lot of gray area, and there's also a lot of assumption. They're thinking mines or rare earths or other things that are non-living. You can maybe get the oil from Canada, and Canada should participate in the value of the oil that's from their country. But microbes are a completely different beast. So there needs to be more intelligent policies and regulation and, frankly, like a framework to really talk about what is open to all. So this is an open source of all microbial information. We talked about this too with Henry and Neely of Cultivarium, our friends Ginger and Michael of Biome Consortia. But the internet was built on open source tools, so should the bioeconomy. So this genetic information should be open, really. And then using the tools in your smarts to use it for something, that's where the ownership lies.
Let's start looking for people who can come in and talk about this, because I think this is going to be one of those topics that continues to evolve. And I think that people who listen to this podcast are going to want to know more about what does it mean? Who gets ownership of useful genetic data? Do they get ownership of the data itself? Or is it more like you're saying on the processing side? But I think that covers us. Let's get into our interview with Natalie Enslow.
Yeah, and Natalie Enslow is an amazing individual, as you will find out in our interview with her. She's really looking at the skin microbiome. So that's a whole nother world. Again, we're just talking about ownership of microbes and what does that look like? But what if it's on your body? What does that mean? That's really interesting. But aside from that, Natalie is the CEO, co-founder of Fjor. It's a company that's looking at skin health and skin microbiome health, which is very fascinating, very interesting. She's going to tell you information that you probably have not heard of in this context. And I had a great time meeting with her in London last week, where we hung out at the Soho House. We talked about strategy. We talked about fun things that we're doing. And you'll hear from her about how her company, Fjor, and how she thinks about the skin microbiome. So let's let Natalie take it away.
Awesome.
Natalie Enslow, welcome to the Grow Everything podcast. We're very excited to have you on today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it was really cool how we met. You are a business person. You reached out to me on LinkedIn. And I was like, wait, who's this person? They're doing something really, really cool. And then we've had a few conversations and here we are. This is amazing.
I know we made it.
We made it. Here we are.
That's the way it works.
That is the way it works.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. I mean, when we connected on LinkedIn and then we had our first chat, it just seemed so natural because you guys understand coming together of biotech and the consumer world. So yeah, it seemed like a perfect fit. So very happy to be here and chatting with you today.
Excellent. Excellent. And then I looked at your LinkedIn, and when we talked, you have a very interesting background, even culturally. So you have a blend of Swedish, Malaysian, Chinese heritage, and you created this company Fjor that is inspired by Nordic values. So can you share a little bit about how your diverse cultural influences shaped your approach to skincare and entrepreneurship?
I mean, I grew up in Singapore. That adds an extra layer on top of things.
Yes.
And growing up in that environment, it's a very multicultural city. There's lots of people moving in and out of the city. One of the things that you're really exposed to is a lot of pollution, a lot of eating out, things like that growing up. I think the biggest thing is that, especially within Asian society, there is a lot of use of antibiotics. I don't know about other cultures. I just know from my background that it was very easy to get antibiotics growing up.
Yep, same here in America too.
Yeah. And my father always said, if you can try to work through it yourself, do your best not to use antibiotics. It's pretty important for your own immunity. And I never really understood why. But later in life, when I moved to Denmark, I did my undergrad there. I started to learn more and got more in touch with that Scandinavian and minimalistic lifestyle. I think it spoke a lot to me in terms of today, we're looking at a lot of overconsumption. Skincare routines are super long. The way we look after ourselves has gotten more complicated than ever. And I learned a lot from the Nordics in terms of what does it mean to scale it back? So how do you look after yourself in simpler terms instead of overdoing it? So I think that really heavily influenced the way that the business is today in terms of wanting something that was super simple, a reflection and extension of nature, but then at the same time reflecting, I think, where society has gone in terms of big city living, being able to have that natural touch in a city environment.
This is super interesting because I think most guys who are listening have no idea how complicated skincare routines are. It's more than just throwing water on your face and walking outside, usually. And it does involve using soap, and sometimes it involves a lot of other products. But you have developed this company, Fjor, and your products use a revolutionary enzymatic technology.
Correct.
Talk about the enzyme, why it works, and why is it unique in skincare? We talk a lot about enzymes on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, look, enzymes are incredible. And I truly think that we're only at the cusp in terms of what enzyme technology can really do for not just the skin, but I think in general. Coming back to what we're doing at Fjor and about what we call the hydrolytic enzyme, this is, as you said, revolutionary tech. So what the enzyme can do is essentially help to balance out your microbiome whilst also achieving targeted exfoliation of the skin. So when we think about our skin, we think about it in the same terms as how we look at our gut. It's the balance of good bacteria and bad bacteria. And we need both of them. We need the balance between the two. And that creates a foundation of our immunity. Now, that's the same logic for the skin. Essentially, our biodiversity on our skin is down 84% than it was from our ancestors. So it sounds absolutely insane, but we are actually in a skin health crisis. But this technology is phenomenal because what it can do is increase the microbiome diversity of your skin by 38% in just 28 days. And there is nothing like it on the market. How it works is that it actually breaks apart bacterial bonds on your skin. So if there's any sort of clusters of any bacteria or whatever, it will break those bonds so that it can allow for the entire ecosystem to thrive and prevent one single strain from actually taking over the skin. That is really what constitutes, I would say, immunity in general in terms of the gut, but also applied to the skin. Now, the enzyme also can achieve targeted dead cell exfoliation, so it's going to help that rejuvenation and that radiance and natural glow that you will get from your skin. But those are the main key points in terms of why it is so truly revolutionary.
Yeah, it's so incredible. I am a customer now, and it's a wonderful product. I just started using it. And so you're definitely going to talk a little bit more about how to apply and use a product. But I love that you're focusing on the microbiome. It's something that we talk a lot about here too. Just a great job of explaining the importance of the microbiome and how diversity of microbiome is important. Just like there's good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, there's the force between good and bad is everywhere. I just love that you think about that and how the microbiome influences immunity too. That's something I think we need to talk more about. And I just love that you're bringing this to the table. You're looking at skincare from a science perspective, but also a minimalism perspective. As you were a marketeer and you saw technology and you want to bring it to the market, I'm just curious to know, like, how did you find the technology? It sounds like you are a microbiologist. You're consuming all these papers and like you're definitely speaking to it. So I don't know if you're always looking at the microbiome or you met somebody. I'd love to know, how did you come across this technology?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this was born out of, I would say, my personal experiences growing up. So my mom has a lot of skin allergies. So she has a very delicate, sensitive skin balance, and I inherited that. So I'm allergic to lots of things. Sometimes I can wake up and I've accidentally used the wrong toothpaste and my lips will be 20 times the size and it's terrible. But for me, it's always been a bit of a guessing game. And for me, trust was a very big component in making my decisions with products. But the other side is my dad, he suffered from a lot of sun damage in his life. He was the generation where sunblock wasn't very cool when they were growing up. It was an afterthought. It wasn't a priority. It was definitely not something they used 365 days a year, especially in Sweden. But the thing about his experience is that I always say when you get a sunburn, your skin remembers and it will come back not next week or next year. This will come back in 50 years' time. And your skin remembers that. And for him, he is really seeing the long-term effects of the sun. So that was my personal experience growing up. And I was very interested in skin. I was like, what does it mean to do too much to your skin that you're getting all these allergic reactions? And what does it mean to do just enough that you are looking after your skin and preventing long-term problems? So all of that comes into looking at, okay, how do I make my skin stronger? And then the microbiome kept coming up. When I quit my job at Rolex, I actually quit on a complete whim. I called my manager and I was like, look, thank you, but I really just want to do my own thing. I want to be in the business where I make people feel good about themselves. And it's not to say that Rolex doesn't do that. They do it in different ways. But I wanted to take that active approach and I wanted to do something on my own. Like I said, I wanted to work with someone smarter than me. I wasn't about to start making skincare in my kitchen as much as, I know that that is something that's very common. And I think that's great if you're able to do it with a lot of rigor and sanitation. But when it comes to the idea that I wanted to do something that mattered and something that was actually revolutionary, because like you said, the industry, it is saturated. There is a lot out there. And in order to cut through, your products really have to work. If you want a product that is science driven and means something to someone, it can't just be something that you've just read online and created a very simple thing. And of course, that's not to say that there are options that work. But I think from my perspective of what I wanted to show up in the market, this was really it for me. I started cold emailing people and asking people, I'm like, does anyone know anyone? I was
great.
That's your MO.
Shameless. Yeah, that's my MO. I mean, for me, it's that shameless nature of if you don't try, you'll never know. And
Exactly.
so I reached out to everyone and then I remembered about this one company and it was a mouth spray and I'd been using it to prevent myself from getting sick and speeding up my recovery. And it was enzyme based. And I remember being like, wow, that was really cool. My dad always talked about it at the dinner table. I asked him, I said, well, I would love to speak to them. And he said, yeah, actually someone came back and said, if you wanted an introduction, they're willing to meet with you. And it was really fun. I was 25 years old. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had been working on the brand and the pillars so that when I walked in there, it wasn't like I was like, trust me, I'm going to make something cool. It was like, no, I'm already on this journey and I'm looking for someone to join in.
Nice.
So we decided to partner up after they were like, yeah, we have this thing. We were going to keep it just as Christmas presents for our families, but you want to take a look. It might not be that great. Let's see. And then it was what became the hydrolytic serum, which is just
amazing,
unbelievable. When I think about there would have been this family in Sweden with the most amazing, strong and healthy and resilient skin, and no one would ever know. But we met and we just instantly felt that spark in terms of feeling like this was the right partner. They saw what I was planning on doing and they had a lot of trust in that too. And we built the foundation of the relationship as to what it is today. These are world-class, absolutely incredible scientists. I'm always in awe when they talk about new things that they're looking at in terms of other segments and sectors. They're just amazing. So I feel incredibly fortunate, but it was that idea that if you can't do it yourself, outsource as best as you can. And I outsourced my smartness to someone else in this journey because I knew I couldn't do it on my own.
Amazing.
Oh, I love that story. You're just so brave. You use that word, being brave and just going out there and being curious and your plan of just having the brand and everything set up. And it's like, yeah, it's good to go. So
look, my mom was not on board with this. So for me, I was like, I'm going to have to move tangentially just to keep on moving so that she can't say, okay, time to stop. But I'm like, no, but look, this part's moving and this part's moving as well. And it took her one whole year to be like, okay, I get it. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. There's nothing like parental disapproval to really drive you to do something.
Absolutely. I'm actually truly, Mom, if you're listening to this, I'm truly grateful today. Was I back then? It was a bit tough, but I am very, very grateful in terms of the fact that I was even having the opportunity to look at this, to actually go down this path and even start this journey, because I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to do this and to do what I love every single day. It's a gift. I really do think that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that is so great. So what are the unique challenges that you faced launching a biotech-driven brand? Did you rely on a specific playbook or a strategic framework to navigate these challenges, or have things been going well? Tell us a little bit about how you got started and got out into the market.
I think with any startup, obviously there are ups and there are downs. I think that's with anything. But coming into the market with a revolutionary piece of tech, there is something to say, especially about consumer choice, that posed an interesting, I would say, discussion point in the early days. I was at the point where I was deciding, do we launch with just one product and introduce the world to it, or do we build a range and go from there? And it just really dawned on me that actually consumer choice, people are inundated with choice. In order to introduce a very revolutionary piece of technology and reduce the friction of choice that people often are faced with on a day-to-day, we wanted to put our best foot forward with our best product and our best formula and allow people to experience it and not have to necessarily choose, and for people to gain that initial trust, because I think that's such an important part coming into the field of not only skincare, but also with biotech. This is something that people have never experienced before.
Hi, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Messaging Lab, the force multiplier for biotech. Your biotech company is making the world a better place. You know that, we know that. But does the world? There's a big reason why some biotech companies attract investors, sign up customers, and get attention. That reason is strategic communications. At Messaging Lab, we translate complex science and economics into compelling narratives. And we have done that for the most successful biotech companies across healthcare, agriculture, personal care and beauty, materials, and the list goes on. We're here to make sure your ideas not only get heard, but resonate with your audience. So if it's time to amplify your company's voice, visit messaginglab.com to explore how we can elevate your story and grow your business.
When it comes to the initial startup, it's a very difficult concept to explain to people. So if you put one thing in their hand and explain that, it allows for a lot more of a digestible experience as a consumer. Mm-hmm. And we saw off the back of that where we got the early adopters. And these people have been with us since the very beginning. They've been through the whole roller coaster of also going through different messaging and kind of understanding what resonates and where we show up in the market.
Yeah, to us, it's super interesting because we have experience in the personal care and beauty space. And we think of skincare and personal care and beauty. I mean, it's basically mano a mano, fighting in the streets. It's super competitive. It's a very tough market. So how have you leveraged the tech and the science behind the tech to create the experience of Fjor for the users? And how does that set you apart from other brands?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple facets to this. It's not just one decision that will resonate with people. I think for us as a brand and what we represent, Fjor is actually an Icelandic word. It means life and vitality and merriment. And it has a very beautiful, deep, fundamental meaning, but it also has quite a gender neutral approach, right? And I think that's something that we take on in terms of brand in everything down to messaging, but also visually. We're an extremely gender neutral brand. We're on track to hit 50-50 male to female split in our audience.
Nice.
Which is very rare for a brand. But I think because we lead with a science foot forward, and we're very conscious into the fact that we're speaking to skin, we're speaking to bacteria, actually. Love bacteria. We're going down that route and blending in this idea of looking at it from how do we create extensions of nature? Our formulas are meant to reflect and be an extension of nature. Our mission that we are on is to improve biodiversity on our skin in the same way that we need to do that in the world, within the environment. So we have a very focused mission, purpose, and niche. And I think that has been a very large component in what can enable us to cut through, to talk to our audience, and I think to be a bit differentiated, to be honest.
Yeah. And you're a pro in marketing. You worked in the luxury brand marketing space at Rolex, for example. How have you applied some of your previous experience to build and grow Fjord? Because you're really coming at the science side, the eco side, then the luxury side to create this new type of feeling, because brands are feelings. Tell us a little bit about that. How are you making this into a luxury product?
Yeah, I mean, look, Rolex was an incredible experience. It's such an iconic brand. You learn that these are not brands that look at their competitors and what the competitors are doing. They forge their own path. They make decisions based on their intrinsic core principles of the brand. And I think that is something that really resonated with me when I experienced this in the context of Rolex, and something that I have really carried forward into the world of Fjor. With the idea of building pillars within a brand, that might seem like an afterthought. But in the early days of Fjor, I came up with the 3 pillars of simple, powerful, and accessible. That is something that resonated through every single component, every decision that happened within the brand. And it helped a little bit on the decision and choice inertia when what we were talking about as a consumer, I applied as an early stage founder. It helped to filter out and create the heartbeat of the brand based on your own fundamentals versus trying to follow what everyone else is doing just for the sake of following, I guess, the industry norm. And I think that's also what Fjor really represents, is that we're not really a skincare brand. We're not a holistic brand either. It's not a vegan type of brand. It's something that sits in its own category.
And you guys have leveraged that. I'll mention TikTok because TikTok is so instrumental. We've seen it really leveraged very effectively by our friends at K18 Hair. You guys have been doing really well on TikTok as well. I think you've reached over close to 2 million views, which again is incredible. But given that there's so much skepticism around new beauty brands, biotech ingredients, how have you broken through the noise and used a science-driven narrative to shift the dialogue and grow your brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of TikTok, TikTok is predominantly used by a younger audience. And this is an audience that, from, I would say, my engagements with the platform, have really become the ultimate skeptics. These are people that have been hurt, I would say, by the beauty industry and lost a lot of trust, because the proliferation of TikTok means that a lot of people buy things because they see it, but they don't actually understand the background or the ingredients or what's going on. I think for me in particular, how I approach the platform, it's not as a brand. It's not with the intention to sell. It's actually with the intention to build a sense of trying to help the next generation. It is starting the conversation. It is planting the seed of, we're going down a path in which we're trying to unearth what are good ingredients for the microbiome? What is the microbiome? And starting these questions to prompt the thought. The video that went viral, I covered a topic in which I saw a lot of people using this sort of like a very common ingredient. And that ingredient had quite a few things that I would not recommend to put on the skin for the purpose of your microbiome and sort of the long-term strength of your skin. It's very different. There's the challenge of short-term thinking versus long-term thinking, I would say, within the beauty world. If we're able to create that trust and that sense of we're here to help, not only do we build that relationship for the future customer, but we also build that sense of this is a thought exercise. This is something that we're actually bringing an important topic to the top of your mind. And hopefully you will make bigger decisions to actually help the movement of the market, because the industry must change. This is just an absolute fact and a core belief that we have, which is the industry must care about the microbiome because skin problems are only getting worse. That is a huge concern in terms of the health of people in the Western world.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're hitting on a lot of points for me, not only professionally in this world of biotech, but also personally. Like, I just felt like I never found the right product for my skin until now. Hello. But like, there you
I'm
go.
glad to hear it.
Yeah, we can put that into a clip and put that on TikTok. But now the products that you have, at least the ones that I've tested, are designed for the face. There's 2 things that always happens when I'm interviewing founders is that there's the obviously stay focused on what you've made, but then also plan for the future, like visioneering. I love that activity when I talk to founders, because I'm sure you've had a lot of thoughts on different types of products to be made at different price points, but I know you also have a focus as well. So can you share a little bit about some exciting developments from Fjor in the near future and how they align with the vision and brand? And also, please take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the products that are in the market today.
Mm-hmm. So when we're looking forward focused, the skin is your largest organ. That is something that actually surprises a lot of people, or actually people need to be reminded, but it is our largest organ. As much as we want to look after the top layer of your skin, there is a whole lot more in terms of skin space that we must look after, but also different pockets of where your microbiome is. Go where the microbiome is externally. That can come in all sorts of different forms. That's where we're headed, right? We're looking at all the different products that can really support the function of our largest organ and support you and build your sort of skin health. That doesn't necessarily have to stop there.
Yeah.
But I would say that's the very vague tease as to where we're going with the brand.
Oh my God, I love it. I feel like a hive mind's happening, but we'll save it for offline, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, like you said, your skin is your biggest organ. I think most people don't realize that. And so that gives you a lot of opportunity for working with microbiome, since the biggest organ is comprised of a number of different microbes. Sometimes they're not in balance.
Yeah.
I love that you keep saying that we're in this crisis, because we had talked to Stephanie Culler early on of Persephone, and she was really the one who highlighted the fact that there is this microbiome death happening just because of the way that we live in the Western world. And I think most people don't realize it, but you see it in terms of skin disorders. Other people see it in terms of the way that their children react to things, allergies, things like that. So I love hearing this. Now, to grow the company, one of the things you did was you raised some money. How has that changed your approach?
I think from a business perspective, when you raise money, you realize that you don't represent just yourself and the company. You represent the people that have backed that vision. And I think that creates a certain, I would say, welcomed pressure in terms of wanting to see through the vision. I think that there is an incredible bond. I'm very fortunate in terms of who our shareholders are, but to be able to rely on a group of people that are vested in the interest, obviously, in the company. But then at the same time, these are people that have been in the industries and been in periphery industries for a long time that can offer a lot of support. It's amazing to have people externally to validate the vision, to see it, and to support you through it. So I would say it's not that it changes so much in terms of the day-to-day side of things, but it creates this added layer of motivation that you not only want to do it for the mission and the purpose and your own vision, but you do it in the fact that these are people that support you along the journey and you want to make them proud. As silly as that is, but you really do want to make them proud and show that this was something worth investing into and you fought tooth and nail to make it happen.
Yeah, that's such a strong founder story. And coming from my own experience, it's personal in the beginning. You came up with this idea, and then all of a sudden you have some team members, and then you have investors, and it becomes this new entity. And it's not just you anymore. It's the company. Yes, you're the founder and you're CEO, but it's the company that exists and you are bringing that mission forward. Yes, you're leading it, but it's not just you anymore. And I think for me personally, that helped me not get too emotional during challenging times because it's the company. It's not me. I'm not the one going through the challenge. It's the company, and I have a team and I have support, and let's work on this together. I can execute on a plan and I can come up with a plan, but you all have to come in on this and let's work on this together. And it's so much more fun and freeing to think of it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say there's one small correction, I think, from myself, and I think you'll probably also say the same, but I can't say I did it alone. Even in the early days when I was technically solo working on the business, it takes a village. You tap into lots of people in your network, and I can't say that I did this on my own. There are so many people that I owe so much to. Lots of dinners, lots of treats, lots of free skincare that have helped me along the way. And I think I wouldn't be here without them.
Right.
And they know that. There's so much to the idea that everyone says that being a founder is a lonely place. And it is in some senses because some of the decisions you make are hard and some of the situations are hard. But there's such a beautiful thing in coming into communities of either fellow founders or the people in your network and your community that support you in different ways, whether that's by sharing your story with their friends or lending their time and in their proficiency to help you. you can't say that it's not necessarily just on your own. And it's something that I'm extremely grateful for in that whole journey. Because I think, again, I wouldn't be here without them. So shout out to everyone on the journey.
Yeah. And we're part of your community now. And we want to thank you for leading this effort. No one else is doing what you're doing exactly the way you guys are doing it. So we need people like you to be able to make these types of products, to be able to think this way in a way that is fresh, innovative, really looking at the science and not just doing business as usual and putting a story and a brand on it and just selling it and no one knows what's going on. And the only choice they have is what they know versus something new.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always like to say is we got to love our bacteria on our face because we share as human beings about 25% of bacteria and microbes, right? But the other 75% of bacteria that lives on your face, they choose you. They choose to live on your skin and to protect you and to look after you. And it's one of those things where whenever I talk about this and I think about it, I always think about all of these little microbes that are just doing their day's work. They're doing an honest day's work and they're just trying to be there for you. When we talk about the construct of skin, the microbiome is 85% of the construct of our skin. The other 15% is just skin cells. And I think within the skincare industry, a lot of people have been focusing on skin cells and looking after skin cells, but they're ignoring 85% of what our skin is constructed as.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so sweet about just the microbes on our skin choosing us. I feel like that's a slogan. And also I can see an animation of microbes being like, oh, look at that person. Let's go crawl on its face.
Yeah, exactly. Like shield and armor, it's like they're crawling there. Like, I'm here to protect you, devote my life to you.
Oh my God, this is a storyline.
So cool.
We should pitch this to John Cumbers. He leads Synbiobeta and he's looking at ways to create narratives that are for animation. So this would be a good one.
I think that's a great idea. Like anything to get the microbiome sexy again and talked about and story told.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You're definitely spitting out a lot of good slogans. Bring microbiome back for like making microbiome sexy.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. So I have another question for you. In this industry of skincare, it's targeted towards women. I don't know in terms of founders and people leading these companies, if there's equal amount of women or is male dominated, but the women in tech movement is significant to you. So how do you see the intersection of biotech and entrepreneurship evolving for women? And what advice would you give to aspiring female biotech entrepreneurs?
I mean, that is a great question. I would say from someone like me and how I got started in this, I knew that there are a lot of smarter people out there than me. There are people that have dedicated their lives within biotech, innovation, R&D, and my background as a marketeer could be used in a way to fuse together two very, very polar industries. When I think about women in tech, it doesn't have to necessarily mean that you are a woman that has a technical background. I think that is an important differentiation in terms of what that term can mean. And for me, it's taking incredible technology that might not have seen the light of day and delegating the important innovation, R&D, and technical understanding to people that are much smarter than me and being able to give that a platform and a voice. I think that is very important in terms of what it means to be a woman in tech. It doesn't have to be that you are just a woman that is technical. You can be a woman that is bringing technical into consumers' hands or to a more simplified platform or just a platform in general.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm sure that our female listeners are going to love that as well.
And our male listeners.
And our male listeners.
Look, I think that if there's anything I've learned in this process, it is that there are so many bright and beautiful minds on this earth that have dedicated their lives into different, very, very niche segments. These are all opportunities that can be brought to create incredible things for the end consumer that does something good. I think that's a very important component to this as well, which is that it is for the betterment of people. I know that longevity is such a hot topic at the moment, but it is for that as well. It's how do we improve our life, our health, how long we're on Earth. being part of that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the scientist. You can just find the people that are incredibly smart and join forces. It means that there's options everywhere, and we just have to be brave enough to go and find them.
Absolutely. So as we end this conversation, let's talk about some skincare, biotech trends. These things continue to evolve. Biotech beauty, we read a fair amount about it. I think it's very important. What trends are you seeing that are interesting, and how are you positioning Fjor to stay at the forefront of those trends?
Trend is an interesting one because I find that the microbiome isn't a trend. It is just a fact. And I think that's very important as a differentiator in terms of why, for us, I wouldn't say that we're necessarily trend spotters. If there's something that I can see from a consumer shift, people are getting a lot more in touch with understanding the microbiome. We see the gut being a huge topic of conversation. Most people understand the baseline fundamentals of eating lots of different types of vegetables and herbs and things to create the breadth, so the diversity of microbes that you put into your body. And that translates as the next wave onto the skin. And we're seeing that in terms of the trend of people actually understanding the microbiome and that education piece and awareness. But as for trends, I guess the biggest word for me, and I mentioned it earlier, it would probably be longevity. I was reading an article the other day about how alcohol consumption is trending down. People are drinking a lot less, and people are taking a lot more agency of their health in terms of supplementing, in terms of the way that they're optimizing their sleep, the way that they're optimizing the way we track things with smart trackers. And we're leaning into this idea that we're optimizing all the different components of our health and our life. And if you want to look at it from a skincare perspective, for example, that would be from the microbiome sphere. There's a recent study that came out that when your skin ages, the pathogenic load increases, which is why your skin actually can develop faster fine lines and things as a regard to your microbiome diversity. If your skin is not diverse enough, the pathogenic loads will take over the skin a lot quicker. In terms of if you have a strong, diverse microbiome, you have a lot more resilience and you can slow down that. I'm not the biggest fan of the word anti-aging. I know that it's the baseline. We have one of our products which is anti-aging, but I think that there is this element for me personally that I like, the idea of active aging. You can't stop it. I find it very difficult looking at our products and being like, oh, it's an anti-aging product. But that's a baseline understanding of what it does. But there is such an important concept of this idea that we're actively aging. We don't have to necessarily say that we won't do it, but we can slow down the process and take agency of that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That's really cool. And of course, we'll have the links to Fjor's products in our show notes. I recommend everyone try it. I think one of the outcomes you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned in the podcast yet, but that it takes about 20 some days for your microbial diversity to really take effect after using the product. So I think I'm on day 7 or 8 at this point. So, I mean, we don't have much time. I'm going to bring you back on to talk more about how do you measure microbial diversity. And maybe it's to have one of your scientist friends come on with you. They sound amazing, but I can't wait to see my skin. I feel good. Those tiny microbes on my skin are there with their shields.
They're happy.
They're happy. They're making me happy. It's symbiotic relationships happening. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, the products are designed to be simple. You can use either or. So we've got the hydrolytic serum or the hydrolytic moisturizer. You can either use them individually depending on your preference of texture. The serum is a lot lighter. It's got 12 ingredients. The moisturizer is a lot more nourishing and richer in barrier building. It's definitely more nourishing in that thicker sensation.
Yeah.
But you can also use them together. I love using them together, but I ebb and flow between all the different products of like, oh, sometimes I'm a serum person, then sometimes a moisturizer, sometimes I'm both. They work beautifully together, but beautifully on their own. And I think that's something very important to us because we want to create an ecosystem for our consumers and for our Fjor family, you could say, that they don't feel like we're trying to sell them stuff for the sake of selling them stuff. This is not our intention. Our intention is to be meticulous and intentional and to create things that truly support your skin function versus trying to replace it. Now, we are looking at products that expand the range, but it's not going to be duplicates of the same thing. We're not going to have 15 different serums and 15 different moisturizers in different colors and shapes. We're doing the best of the best in each tier. In each product will be its absolute best version of itself. And we will strive constantly to improve each and every time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I love that. You're teasing a little bit of the future products. We will talk about that. I'm really excited. And when those are being developed and you're open to talking about them, I can't wait to have you back on and talk about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can go a full deep dive.
Yeah. And then if I come to London, I am coming to London and maybe we'll chat about that. We'll plan some things out. It'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, it's been such a pleasure to chat. For me, I just love talking about this topic. I love bacteria. Like I said, we have to just get ready to love it, embrace it, embrace bacteria, because you know what? It will embrace you back if you're good to it.
Oh my God.
And I think there's so much to do with how we look after ourselves, and we have to take every small step. It's 1% in all the different parts of our health. The skin has been overlooked for too long, but it's time to start really looking after it in building the strength, building resilience so that you can be healthier and you can be the best and optimal version of yourself.
Yes.
That's great.
That's a rallying cry. That's a rallying cry. But thank you so much, Natalie. We will certainly talk to you again. This was so much fun.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. So I appreciate the time.
Thanks.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Karl, what did you think of that episode?
Well, first of all, I'm super jealous that you got to meet up with Natalie in London. I wish I could have been there. I really enjoyed the conversation. One of the things that was really interesting about Natalie and her product, number one, is enzyme-driven, enzymes to promote the microbiome. I think that's fascinating. And then number two, the fact that this product, their initial product, is used equally by men and women. So that means people want to keep their microbiomes healthy. Those that know are interested in keeping their skin microbiomes healthy. So I was fascinated by that. What did you think?
Yeah, that point of Fjor being used both by men and women equally is something that Natalie really wants to hone in on. It's something that is unique in the world of skincare. It's something that is valuable because you're not just being pigeonholed to one gender. And it was good to talk to her about that when I met up with her. Amongst many other things, we had a great time talking about the skin microbiome and its diversity, which we talked a lot about in this episode. But the more diverse it is with the right type of balance, the more your skin can self-regulate. You don't need maybe as many products. It was also good to talk to her about the different types of skincare products and what are the benefits, when do you wear it? And she just got very into this world and very knowledgeable. She's not from the world of skin science, but she is now an expert in this. I was telling her I was using retinol. She's like, okay, well, be careful with that because it's very harsh on your skin and this is what you should do. And I was like, wow, I mean, like she is a professional on all levels. So I enjoyed talking to her about that because we really dug deep on like what are the microbes that are on there? How do you measure microbiome diversity, which is skin swabbing? And there are companies out there. She was sharing names of companies with me that she's working with and that we can look into, which we should certainly get some of these companies on our podcast. But what a great story. I really appreciated the story she shared about how Fjor came about, really from her interest in skin microbiome, getting connected with the scientists, approaching them with a fully thought through brand and go-to-market strategy. That is incredible. So incredible.
Yeah, I mean, she's another example of a non-scientist or non-biologist coming into the biotech space. And we've had several people like that on here, and we just love them because it just shows that the democratization of this knowledge makes it possible for more people to come in and create interesting brands and interesting products based on knowledge that is out there. The fact that she had a go-to market strategy up front shows that she's a consummate marketer and a consummate business person. I also love, she said, our microbiomes choose us or chose us.
Oh, yeah.
Which to me was just another reminder of the complexity of biology because we start our day and end our day by washing our faces. So we're washing these beneficial microbes off our bodies. And then depending on what you eat, depending on where you are, Maybe you're going in the subway, maybe you're spending a lot of time in the sun. Your microbiome is changing based on those things. And it's just another reminder as to how complicated biology is. And so being able to create a product or a set of products that are going to help your microbiome survive, thrive, all of the wear and tear that we put it through, I think is just amazing. So I'm looking forward to seeing Natalie's progress and getting to know her. We told her when she comes to New York, we'd love to hang out with her, and it'll be great to have her come back on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So if you're interested in learning more about Fjor, information's in the show notes. It's a great product. I've been using it and I love it. It has not just this hydrolytic enzyme, but all the things you need, like collagen peptides, all the other probiotics. I mean, we really got deep into the science when I got to meet her, and obviously in this podcast. But thanks for listening, everyone. Let us know your questions. Like we said, this podcast is for everyone in our industry. Join us, recommend any guests to come on. Let's get the word out about how the bioeconomy is developing and helping us grow everything. So thanks a lot. And Karl?
That's the pod.